let's look at example 2. This example is kind of a strange one, but it's a really good application of all the rules we've learned so far. So we're going to start, like always, by finding the domain. We know the domain, we look at the denominator. However, be careful with this denominator. Remember, it's called difference of squares because the numbers have to be subtracting, difference. This sum of squares you actually cannot factor. And let me show you why this is a little bit more. If I take this domain, set it cannot equal to 0, so cannot equal -9, and right here. Do you see I end up square rooting a negative? That's imaginary. So that means this denominator actually doesn't factor anymore. Well, it does factor, but it factors as imaginary. And we don't care about imaginary numbers this chapter because we're all about graphing, and you can't graph imaginary numbers. So if I look at this one, for the domain, because this doesn't factor, my domain is just going to be -infinity to infinity, everything. Now I check holes. Do I have anything on top and bottom that cancels? Nope, nothing on top and bottom that cancels, so no holes. X-intercepts, set the numerator equal to 0. So I have one x-intercept at -1, 0, and this is an odd x-intercept because the exponent on that factor is a 1, and 1 is an odd number. Y-intercepts, plug 0 in for everything. 0 plus 1 over 0 squared plus 9 gives me 1/9. So 0, 1/9. I should be graphing these as I go. There's 0, 1/9. There's -1, 0, and a little O for odd. Vertical asymptotes, we look at the denominator. But remember, we talked about earlier, this denominator does not factor. So because we cannot set this denominator equal to 0, and I mean, we tried, but we got imaginary, there are actually no vertical asymptotes. And then our last one, our end behavior, the degree on top is a 1, degree on bottom is 2. So since it is bottom heavy, our end behavior is y equals 0. So the ends of my graph should be pointing towards 0. Sorry guys, just going back to color code these. So this is the graph that I've got. I know I need to go through my y-intercept. On the left of this y-intercept, I can come to this x-intercept, and because that is odd, I know I need to cross through this x-intercept. And then there's nothing between this x-intercept and my star, so I'm just going to curve back around and point to my star. There's nothing between this y-intercept and this star, so just curve back around and point towards that star. And that is our graph. Like I said, it's kind of a funky looking graph. When your denominator doesn't factor, you don't have any vertical asymptotes, it kind of looks a little weird. But I did just want to walk through one example of that where you don't have any vertical asymptotes. In the next video, we'll come back and learn our last advanced rule for graphing, and then we'll just practice.